started. Hi everyone, thanks for coming. The first thing I want to do is for the few folks that are in here, can you just in the chat real quick tell me if you have any riding experience or if you are completely new to equestrian? Or you can unmute and tell me, that's fine too.
Personally, I've ridden like once or twice as a kid out at like one of the old West style ghost towns where I live. I'm from Matonville, which is like Arizona, so we're like one of those like cowboy states or whatever. So from there, yes, since like 8 or 9, I've never touched a horse, so completely
Okay.
unfamiliar, I'd say.
So it looks like we've got someone who owned horses, someone else who has a lot of experience with riding. That's good news. Anybody else want to chime in on their experience with horses? All right. Well, I'll go ahead and give you a little background on myself. I'm Lanza Rose de la Cumbe in the SCA. I have grown up around horses. My father had race horses when I was growing up. They taught me the hard way how to ride later on in life. I actually took lessons and learned the proper way to ride. And honestly, the SCA has probably been the biggest thing to attribute to my growth, just because I've had to learn, how to steer without just my hands and, use other methods and really become a better horseman. So if that's something that you're interested in, that's something that the SCA absolutely offers. So I'll start out by saying the best way to initially get involved is to just come hang out at the equestrian area, volunteer for ground crew. We always need hands, whether it's just moving things around, helping people who are already mounted, scorekeeping, timing. There's so many jobs, and a lot of times it's the riders switching out and doing that work. So if you have any interest and you come and help us out, that's a great networking opportunity for you, and people will get to know you.
And I'm sure you can find something to do for anybody, no matter what their level of
Absolutely.
experience and what if they're afraid of horses or whatever, you could still find something safe for them to do where they're
absolutely
helpful and completely safe.
Yep. And like I said, as far as like scorekeeping, timekeeping, you could be outside the arena if you just wanted to help out and we're a little nervous about the horses. But I mean, inside you could hand up weapons to riders. You could, even as far as jousting, that's a big job. We need people to hand us up the lances, to refill the lances each turn. So, and I mean, even things with the normal games that we do, resetting equipment after each turn. So there's a lot that you can do to participate without necessarily riding if that's not something you're interested in. You just want to be around the horses. Now, most people
process to that, to learn how to be around horses and not get yourself in a position where you can get hurt or get stepped on or get bit.
Absolutely. Obviously, horses are large and can be dangerous. Even the best horse can get scared and have an accident. It happens to the best of us. Let's see. Good. It looks like everybody here has a little bit of riding experience. That's exciting. So I know a lot of people, think, I used to do it, it'll come right back. It is good to spend some time practicing outside of the SCA, even if you do have that time in the saddle from some time ago. One of the best things that you can do, honestly, is find someone local and just take a couple lessons, get back in the habit. But as far as once you've gotten into the community and you've, helped out and the games, if you can network with people in your area, you can volunteer, to help them at the actual events. A lot of people are willing to work with you if you put that in that time and effort and can kind of share their horse with you. When we were at Middle Kingdom 50 year, I had a friend bring up a SCAdian who used to have a horse, hadn't ridden in a couple years, but she's a very good horsewoman. And so she helped me out with taking care of Heffy while I was there, and we did some kind of just practicing to see how the two of them work together. And then she was actually able to take the test and got her her authorization in both riding and general games. So that was pretty exciting. But the biggest thing is when you can network with someone in your area, you can, I mean, that volunteering to help goes a long way. If somebody came to me and said, you know, I'm a good rider, and they were willing to help me out, at most events you'll see 2 and 3 people on my horses, just because in my mind it's as good for them as it is for the people to get a chance to get out there and ride.
So what are they looking for in terms of just general, like, okay, if I'm authorizing a rattan fighter for the first time, they don't have to be a great fighter. They have to know the rules. They have to have an offense and a defense and basically not be a danger to themselves or to others. Technique and mastery of technique comes with time.
Exactly.
Is that kind of what you're looking for, or similar?
Absolutely. So that's one reason I suggested the lessons. So even if it's just again networking with someone near you and going out to their place privately and taking the time to get your confidence back in the saddle, obviously to authorize, the very first is just general riding. It's basically, we'll let you ride in a parade or ride around an arena. You can't play any games, but it shows, you know, yes, I can steer the horse, I can control the horse safely. I know what to do if there's an emergency situation, like if another horse gets loose. I know basic care for my horse, and I know what to do in case a horse gets injured. The next step up from that is your games authorization. And most of the games out there that you'll see a lot of people playing, the obstacle courses, the speed challenges, like the heads and rings and all your general games, are things that you can do with just those first 2 authorizations. Now, once you're more comfortable using a weapon, there are other things you can do. Obviously, we have jousting and mounted combat. I know not everyone is interested in the more martial skills, which is absolutely fine. It's definitely not for everyone. But we do even have the possibility of mounted archery. We have driving, which is awesome. We do have a handful of drivers in the mid-realm that you'll see mainly at mounted war games when it's on.
So what is entailed in that, if you don't mind me asking?
Which one?
What did you talk about? Driving?
Driving.
Mm-hmm.
So it's basically pulling a carriage. So it would be the same as a general riding, showing that you could control your mount, well, not mount, your horse in the rig properly and safely. Again, safety is our main concern, whether you're doing ground crew, whether you're riding, anything. We want to make
things
sure,
like having the awareness to, like, if I'm going to make a right-hand turn, I need to swing a little wide to the left so I can make the turn and don't jackknife, you know, or turn it over or whatever. But cognizant of how to control my vehicle and the horse and how they interact.
Absolutely. And again, that's the same with general riding. Even though really people on the ground should be looking out for you, you have to have that, you know, the eyes in the back of your head, and always consider how close you are to someone else, and just to be that extra layer of protection, just to keep everyone safe. Speaking of safety, helmets are not required, but we do suggest them, especially with, you know, some of the higher skilled things that we're doing. I mean, we're using a sword in one hand and controlling the horse with the other, or even your feet to steer. So there's so much going on at once. You have to have that cognizance that you can do multiple things kind of at the same time and still be aware of your surroundings.
So can you use, is an equestrian helmet, like I'm sure there are ones that are made specifically for equestrian people that ride and do that kind of thing on purpose all the time, but is an SCA helmet, is that applicable?
So
It
there
would
are
seem to
people.
me, it would seem to me that my Spangen helm doesn't provide very good. I mean, yeah, it'd keep you from hurting me, but the padding inside isn't necessarily designed to keep me from getting a concussion or hurt myself when I fall on the ground and hit head first. Yeah.
Exactly. We do, obviously, when we joust, we ride in our helms. But what some people do is they'll take their regular riding helmet, which is just something along the lines of this, And the nice thing is a lot of these are very adjustable. So again, talking about sharing, we could, when there aren't issues with COVID and whatnot, easily share helmets. And a lot of people have done some really neat things where they've made covers for their helmets to make them look like, you know, the Roman helms, or the like the German with the fur around them. So we've had some people do some really neat things to make sure they're staying safe, but also look more period. That's been really great.
Do I take it we don't have requirements that they have to have an equestrian approved helmet? That could they get on the field with something like, to me, that looks similar to my bicycling helmet. I have a bicycling helmet, and that is designed, you know, if I go forward off my bike, to keep me from busting my head open. And it's got a lot of padding into it. Looks real similar. The neck part is a little different on mine than it is yours, but is that something that's, you know, would be useful?
We don't have to ride in a helmet. You'll see some people who don't use them at all. However, bike helmets aren't really rated for just the fall, because you're so much higher up, and a lot of times there's different mechanics working that would lead you to make an unscheduled dismount from your horse than would on a bike. So, I mean, you could wear one, but it's not nearly as effective as a horse riding helmet. So again, the major things too are to get to know all of the games. There are several sites on the Middle Kingdom Equestrian College page that talk about the different games that we play. So for each of those, it says the kind of weapons you can be used to using, and the things that you know for each. Like anything with a point on it, you're going to kind of use common sense. If you're riding around with something with a point, you don't want that point out because there are other people moving around. So you hold that up. And it's the same thing when you're ground crew. If you're carrying that around for someone, you hold it up so that you don't have any accidents colliding with someone near you.
And I'm assuming that you don't want it pointed like 45 degrees towards the ground, because if it catches on the ground, it's going to go flying, or it's going to pull you off the horse, or it's going to do bad things no matter what it does.
We do use that technique to get rings off of the lance, but that is basically at a halt when you're done, you put them down, and then you pick it back up.
You saw Aaron's question, right?
I'm looking right now. Let's see.
I can read this. You can talk, and I can read stuff to you if that's what you want to do. I don't have no problem with that.
That's great.
For those of us with little vision in our fighting helmet, I have a Crusader style helmet. Are there restrictions on styles of combat helmets allowed due to safety reasons?
Pretty much you can ride in whatever helmet you want, whatever you feel safe in. Again, helmets are not required. So if you want to wear some style of Roman helm, you know, that's kind of more open, that you wouldn't necessarily do your heavy fighting in, but makes your kit look a little nicer, you're welcome to do that. Just know that may not necessarily protect you as much when you might have again, unplanned dismount from a horse.
Well, and something else I thought about, this is more body armor than helmet, but like if you're wearing mail, okay, mail's kind of like if you rub up against somebody, it's like a cheese grater going against you. It's, you know, because mine's riveted. It's got all the little rivets and stuff like that, and it really is like a cheese grater. If you've got chausses on, I can't imagine if that comes up against the horse, especially with any type of force, that it's going to like it. You know, that's going to hurt it.
Well, generally you'll have
well, I know you've got a saddle and stuff on, but I'm just talking about getting the hair, if he's got mane, you know, any hair that you can get caught, or if you inadvertently make contact with him, his neck, you know, if you got a long sleeve shirt, you have to think about things like that too. You know, it's a living creature.
Absolutely, yes. It's just, and it's again, paying attention to your surroundings and always being careful. I actually do ride in chainmail shirt that I fight in as well. I haven't had any issues to date, but again, I'm very careful when I'm around the horses and around other people's horses. Some of the noises from these different sets of armor and whatnot really make horses nervous. They're not used to it.
Do you get your hair caught in the mail? See, I don't have long hair, so that's not an issue for me, but I will get, mine's got a drape and everything. And I'll get my mustache or beard caught in it. It hurts.
I generally will wear like a coif underneath, like a longer one with a little bit of a I don't know what it's called. I'm bad with these things, but the little neck piece, and then I put my hair in a ponytail and it's fine.
Mine comes down and I've got, it's open so I can breathe. So there's just bars and stuff. So my hair can go into the, you know, from your face. and
Mhm.
mine gets caught.
I'm sure it happens. Um, so moving on to a little bit more about the actual games themselves. I know a lot of times Equestrian is kind of out away from everything else, so not everybody's familiar with what we do. Some of the major games as far as the challenges that we do are ring tilting, which is we have basically a T-post set up, or a post with a T on the top that have small rings, and there are rings anywhere from about 1 inch to about 6 inches, and those are worth different points for each of them. So we actually use a live-ended spear, and we'll go down the line with that spear and try to get the rings on each pole. Now, that is basically practice for jousting, but it is an actual game or practice that they did back in medieval times. Another thing that we do is called behead the enemy. So it's basically heads on poles that are set up about, they're 5 to 6 feet off the ground, and you do a slalom kind of down the poles, and you hit with a sword as you go by. So we generally use sort of boffer type or wooden like toy swords for this. But again, if that falls, if it lands wrong, people and horses can get hurt. So it's something that you need to learn how to use safely, especially around the animals. And so just taking the time to either help ground crew, even if you're just watching, you get to learn all that ahead of time. And then that gives you a little more, sorry, it's been a long day. You're more prepared when you get going. Another thing we do is called birja. There's basically a large circle on a pole, and you try to put a stick through it as you ride by. This really helps with your hand-eye coordination, and is a game that they used to play in medieval times. So you have a circle sitting perpendicular to where you're riding, and you actually toss the stick through and try to catch it on the other side. It's very difficult. Oddly enough, the faster you go, the easier it is because it's moving with you seemingly. But that's something that you'll see pretty often. Another thing that you will see is the quintain. So I'm sure most people have seen the Knight's Tale, where they've got the different boards set up with the swings so he can practice jousting. We actually have a lot of versions of that we use. Again, it's not only practice for jousting, it's good for your horsemanship. It helps you to steer, it helps you to target. So we use a blunt-edged 8 to 10 foot pole for that. Some people have actually used their spears for fighting. I've used mine in a pinch. But you're actually riding down a lane, whatever speed you're comfortable with. If it ends up being the canter, like when you are jousting, then but it's very good practice for aiming.
Does that generate enough force? Like if you're using one of the fiberglass spears, like I've got a takedown spear in addition to the long ones that don't come apart, would that would it do enough force that's going to do damage to your spear?
I have not seen it do damage because the quintain gives so much, it spins right away when you hit it. I've used my my spear for a couple years now for practice, and I've never had any issues, and there's no cracks in it.
They're pretty tough. They're pretty tough.
Well, I mean, you gotta figure if you're out there on the shield wall holding your spear and some big guy runs into it, it's definitely not any harder than that. So, and again, a lot of times, if it hits too hard, it'll kind of move back and absorb some of that hit anyway. So there are also a couple games that we play as teams without as much equipment in the way of swords and whatnot, but again, very good for your horsemanship. So the first is called tippet tag. It's kind of like tag on horseback. So everybody's familiar with the tippets that the ladies will wear that hang off of their elbow areas. We have usually Velcro tippets that will hang, that we can attach to our arms, that you can hang off. and you're literally going around trying to grab the other people's tippets. So it can either be kind of everybody against everybody, or you can do teams. Most often you will see teams. So basically the last rider standing with any tippet still on wins it for their team. It's a lot of fun, especially for new folks. If we'll start out at a walk, everybody who's comfortable kind of plays then. It gives you a really good feel for moving around other horses. And one of the nice things that I noticed is this is actually one of the games that helped me most with my horsemanship skills. Is you're focused on what you need to do, and a lot of times you make that communication without thinking about it. So it really improves that kind of hand-eye coordination that the horse knows. So if I turn my head this way, they're sensitive enough to feel it. So when you're out there moving and you're doing these things, it's a really good bonding experience with your horse, and it really gets you to see how little you have to tell them before they will actually get it and move. Like just leaning a little bit, they feel that, and if they know that that means you're about to go that way, they'll start going that way.
Is that true across the board? Like, let's say I'm riding a horse that I'm not familiar with. However, I have my own horse and I'm used to riding it, and we've developed, it knows what I want, it knows how I do things, and vice versa. That gets to be symbiotic. How much of that carries over to using, like, say, somebody else's horse?
It depends on the horse and how much experience they have in that game. Obviously, there's different riding styles. Everybody has a little bit of their own cues. But if you get kind of an overview of how that horse rides, how they like to steer, they all have that sense of moving with the rider. So they can feel those little shifts no matter who is on them. Now, they may not be as clear about what it means if it's a horse that hasn't done tippet tag as often, or even if there's a rider, a newer rider, and they're usually more stiff and they're not seeing, they're not doing that moving, they're just doing with their hands or whatever. But generally,
well, the horse feels your stiffness, wouldn't you agree? Like if I'm uneasy
absolutely.
or I'm stiff, the horse senses that, and that may
Absolutely.
translate to the horse feeling nervous too.
Yep.
Okay.
If anybody else has a question, feel free to unmute yourselves and ask. I thought I saw someone raising their hand a moment ago. Looks like there's another message on the board.
Yeah.
I come from a kingdom with a small equestrian community and almost no events with equestrian events. Is there mounted archery or other weapons like the live weapons ranges? So we do have mounted archery. Actually, that's one of the more popular equestrian activities in the mid-realm. We also have what we call chariot archery, which generally is if somebody is driving, they can actually come and drive around, and anyone can ride with them, because just to ride in a cart, you don't have to be authorized. So the person will be driving and someone else can sit in the cart or stand in the cart, depending on the cart type, and actually shoot off the cart as if they would in mounted archery, where they would shoot off the horse.
So do people put
separate
teams together? Like, I'm the equestrian member of the team, then I have somebody who's a good archer, and we pair together. So we've got somebody who knows what they're doing with the horse and the cart, and we've got somebody who knows how to shoot.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And a lot of the times what we'll do, we'll actually just like the driver will come around, drop one passenger off, and then pick one up. And that way it just gives more people kind of a chance to try it, to learn about equestrian. And it's something you don't really have to have experience with. If you don't already know how to do archery, then there's just a few extra safety. Like usually we have, two sides of the lane. You have to shoot after this side and then before you get to this one, just for the same way as a lane for archery.
Just range limits, essentially.
Exactly. And so that's a lot of fun. That is a separate authorization. But if you're already familiar with archery, and then you get to learning equestrian, it's definitely something that is a lot of fun to do. We have quite a few authorized mounted archers in the mid-realm. Very cool. Yeah. Combat archery definitely applies. We do not use crossbows around the horses at all, but the traditional style bows, the long bows and the recurves and such are fine to use with the chariot archery. I've seen them used for mounted archery. The recurves do better than the longbows, obviously, because you'll have issues with poking the horse to the side as you go. But I've actually invested in a Mongolian horse bow, which are a little bit shorter. That way they don't come down to your horse's flanks and you're not poking anything that you shouldn't. And also they have more curvature so that when you draw, you get more kind of bang for your buck as far as power goes. So, you know, it's kind of like you try it out, see how it goes. If it's something you get into, then you can upgrade your equipment. But there's nothing saying you can't do it with, you know, a normal recurve bow.
Is the reasoning for not using crossbows, is that because the horses do not like the sound? It startles them, or is it for another reason? I'm just asking. I don't actually know.
It's more safety than anything. I mean, especially mounted, obviously. It's hard enough to load a crossbow when you're on the ground. But I mean, even in a chariot with that confined space, 2 people in there, it's just not safe. And again, safety is always our number one concern.
Well, that's true. I mean, you probably can't take a crank style crossbow or one that's got goat's feet that I have to put my foot in a stirrup, or I have to do this or do that, and I really need to be standing.
You can imagine trying to do that while either you're seated in a moving vehicle that doesn't have a lot of room, or you're standing and the vehicle's moving and bouncing along. So it's just not safe. So we keep any kind of horse archery to the traditional style hand bows. Does anybody have any questions about the games I went over so far, or tip-a-tag or anything? Okay. So another game that you may have seen played is called Buzkashi. I know in the beginning of one of the Rambo movies I've heard, they actually show the Middle Eastern folks playing this game. They used to actually, well, they still do, actually used goat carcasses, kind of, if you can imagine rugby on horseback with a goat. We have several stuffed goats in the mid-realm that folks have generously made and donated to us. There are a few who have kind of lasted longer than others. I believe they one that Cope has made called Igor, who has just probably survived longer than any other goat. As you can imagine, kind of like a football field style, and the goal is on one end, there's a cone on the other. You literally have to ride around the cone and back to the goal and toss the goat in there. However, while you're doing that, you have to pass it back and forth between your team members at least 3 times. But the whole time you're doing that, the other team is trying to steal it from you. And as soon as that happens, the whole count starts over. So the game can get very intense. We've had to make a lot of rules, you know, like only 2 people holding a goat at once, because we've had goats drawn and quartered and kind of just explode with stuffing everywhere. Again, we go through a lot of goats. So it takes a lot of work to make one that can stand up, but it's a lot of fun to do, and it's a lot of fun to watch. But again, it's one of those things where you're almost thinking more about the goal than your horsemanship, and these things that you're doing become more of a reaction. And these are just great for getting ready for mounted combat, honestly, both tip-a-tag and Buzkashi. Any questions there?
So is that like, okay, in the Army, you train so that you don't have to think about what you do. When you do it, you just instinctively know what to do and you go do what you've been trained to do.
Exactly, almost like muscle memory.
Yeah.
So you're thinking
doing
turn
the same
left,
thing. And you just do the turn. You don't have to think about it anymore.
Before you realize it, yeah.
Okay. That makes sense.
So again, the biggest things to get involved, just come talk to us. We have a Middle Kingdom Equestrian group on Facebook. Even if you don't have a horse, even if you know nothing about them, if you're interested, join and talk to us. The equestrians in the Mid-Realm are super friendly. They're happy to give you advice. It's a great way to get to know people, and again, find out if there's anybody close enough that you're willing to travel to and, you know, kind of start that bond with. I mean, like I said, so many people have ridden my horse at events. Most people know Heffy. He actually got an award of the hooves because he's just helped so many people out. He's gotten a lot of people authorized. He often gets used by other folks at events if there's any issues with their horses, or just, again, equestrians that don't have horses but are wanting to get out there and play.
Which says to me that he's probably just a really good-natured, general, all-around horse? I mean, because if somebody was temperamental, if the horse is temperamental and they're hard to control and they're real, they have a lot of eccentricities, and some horses do, that
Mhm.
it would be harder to get just the average person on them. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, generally at a walk, which we would suggest for most people, it's there are several people in the mid realm who have horses that are nice, well-broke horses that anybody can ride to walk. Now, some horses get a little excited when they're playing these games and they're moving faster than that, and that's actually another thing I wanted to talk about. With the obstacle course and the challenge course sort of games, the rings, heads, um, poles is another. It's basically like heads, but you ride down straight and hit the reeds off either side. And also with the rings and quintain, you go with whatever speed you're comfortable at. We're going to have you start at a walk, even, you're thinking, yeah, it's easy to hit this at a walk, but you're working on not just being able to do that, you're riding a horse and controlling weapons at the same time. It's like driving a car and texting. It's not easy, and you're not supposed to do that. But we, spend a lot of time practicing doing two things at once. And especially some things as intricate as horse riding, when it's already so many variables combined, you really have to start at that slower speed, get yourself comfortable, get the horse comfortable, and then work your way up. So most people will start at that walk. When they're comfortable, they'll move up to a trot. If it goes well, awesome, they'll keep practicing that way. If not, just move back down to you're comfortable. We never say that anything has to do at a certain speed. And if that's requested in like a challenge course or something, you can just say, I'm not comfortable, I'm going to stick at a walk, and maybe they'll give you like a small penalty or something. But normally, the speed of the horse is not something that we require anybody to go higher than they're comfortable with, because again, safety is our first concern. So like with Buzkashi and Tipitag, what I like to do is when I'm running the games, I'll say, okay, we're going to start at a walk. That way, the more inexperienced people can get a chance to play, and we'll play a game or two that way. And they'll say, okay, anybody who's not comfortable moving up to a trot, go ahead and sit this one out, and then we'll let people who can go a little faster play. And then we'll do again a couple game or two at the trot, and then we'll move up to where the canter is allowed. So that way everybody can try it out, can be comfortable, and gain that experience. So any other questions right now? Okay. So if you don't have a lot of experience with horses, again, just go out to the equestrian, start talking to folks, ask them to help out in the barn. If you're helping tack up the horses and everything, they'll tell you what to do, what not to do, what to look out for, and you'll learn just how to generally be around horses, which is a lot more complicated than it sounds. It's not like a 20-pound dog, this is a 1,200-pound animal. And as much as we train them and everything, accidents can happen, and they are sometimes a little bit erratic, so you just have to always be on guard. You have to watch your toes. You have to be careful of everything that's going on around you. Let's see. On the safety aspect, are specific garb pieces you ask people not to wear? Everyone, there's no real specifications as far as garb with equestrian. It's pretty much just be careful and be aware. If you've got a big flowy dress on and you're going to get onto a horse,
it's not
move
going to lay
around in
right.
that dress a little bit.
Yeah.
Get them used to it. Obviously ask the person, I'm planning, if they're letting you ride, are they okay with this garment? Are they okay with flowy garments? Are they okay with clinking of jewelry or something like that? Most of the horses do wear barding, so they're used to that flowy kind of stuff and everything else. But again, there's some that are newer, and you just want to be careful around those horses. So, I mean, even as far as when equestrian is next to heavy fighting, if there's a big clash in melee, some of the horses might never have heard that because, again, we're usually off far away, and sometimes they'll spook and there'll be a little excitement out on the arena. So it's just one of those things where you always have to be on guard and always have to be ready to, respond.
Messina is asking you what hussar wings are.
So I'm honestly not sure what that is. I have seen, is it, what's the waving?
Well, you can have the hoopalons that come like have a sleeve that'll come all the way down to like my ankle. You know, those are big and things. But I've seen like a lot of the stuff was, ladies used to wearing a gown in a certain way. If she has a gown that comes all the way down to the floor and it's got a certain amount of volume. Well, when you get up on a horse, you can't use that. That garment was not designed to fit you around and over top of the horse in the way you're going to be sitting on a horse unless you're sitting side saddle or something like that. And it's not going to work. And it may pull up to where you're showing part of your legs and stuff that you're not comfortable with because it wasn't designed for that. So think about things like that before you get on, because you're going to be straddled on a horse saddle and that has to go over top of the horse and come down.
Absolutely. What a lot of times that what we'll do is either make extra full riding skirts. One of my favorite things to do is make a oh my gosh, I haven't SCA'd in so long. The 14th century coat hardy.
Coat hardy.
I make a coat hardy that buttons all the way up. And if I'm going to be riding, I'll wear a pair of tights underneath and literally unbutton it to my belly button. And that way I have a riding skirt. Do you guys have a question up there?
Yes, Kate. Sorry. One of the things that I always recommend for people that are not very used to riding is that if they have spurs that they're wearing, because we get a lot of the crown,
nice.
etc.
Yes.
Yeah, they're bad about that. And you know, some of those 14th century long shanked spurs with the pointy rowels.
Mm-hmm.
That's a major accident waiting to happen. If
absolutely. Sorry, yes, I wasn't even thinking of that in terms of gar. But yeah, if somebody who doesn't know how to ride wants to get on, and they have spurs, definitely have them take those off.
Now, Mike, back to the hussar wings. I was being a smartass, and I apologize. We have 2 horses currently, and our king 2 years, a year ago, I don't remember. It's been a while since we got SCA'd now. But for Gulf Wars, he wore.
Was that the one with the big wings that came up over the back?
Oh
my gosh, that was gorgeous. I had no idea what they were called, but wow, they were amazing.
Yeah, we had to specially train Christy to ride with those, so.
I can imagine.
Adding that as an extra.
There's all kinds of goofy things that you may see.
That you want to desensitize your horse, beforehand.
Absolutely, and that's another thing is
going to be happening.
Exactly, and that's another thing is when you're talking to people about using their horses, if they say they're not comfortable with it, it's more likely because their horse is greener and not used to all these things. And again, it's about safety. So horses that are new to the SCA events, even if they are really well-broke horses, that's a lot of new things to take in. There could be noise from heavy fighting. There could be all these flowy gowns. Somebody could walk by with wings on. There's jingling, clanking from armor, all kinds of new things. So it's very important that, you understand that if you ask to ride someone's horse or, help them out, if they say no, it's nothing personal. It's likely safety. A lot of these horses anybody can't hop on and ride. There's a lot to it. Again, there are a few of us with horses that have been doing the SCA for a while, horses that have been trained to ride, again, usually older horses that have that experience, that we're happy to share and kind of help you learn on.
Well, it seemed to me like there's a whole bunch of stuff that's taken in different contexts. Like if you want to see something, to me, from an anthropological point of view, when you have all the royalty, like we're down at Gulf Wars, and you're going to have, for opening ceremonies, well, they will acquaint them. They have a meeting where they go up and they'll usually have a meal or whatever they're doing, but they have the person that's going to be their handler for the horse, and they'll pair everybody up, and this is the horse that you're going to be riding, or this is the whatever. And some of them, like I never thought about it, like here's a horse that wants to eat your silk. If you got a big silk veil, he wants to eat it. And is all the time pulling at, trying to get it. And I never thought about that because that's not a context that I would put one and one together and get. But
Mm-hmm.
go watch that stuff and see how much interaction and matching up of, well, okay,
Yeah.
you've got this style of garb. My horse doesn't do well with that. It'd be better if we, put you with Thunder over here because he's calmer, he's this or he's that.
Yeah. And one of the biggest things is weight. You're like, you can't just throw whatever king and queen on whichever horse. You have to match up the king and queen. Some people have the bigger draft horses. Some people I've seen have ponies there, so you necessarily have to find a smaller set of either king or queen to ride those animals. And we have had a few people in royalty who have been authorized. So as opposed to having that person lead them, they actually wish to walk and ride the horse themselves. They'll still have someone walk with them just as a safety precaution. But again, if you're being led, you don't have to have that authorization. And that's how we kind of get away with that's how we can do these wonderful processions, especially the Gulf Wars obviously is the biggest we have. But at Mounted War Games every year, Gwen puts on an amazing show there, and she starts it out every year with a procession. And so, you can lead if somebody wants to ride in it but isn't authorized. You can lead them on that horse, and again, you just need to go ahead of time. This is what I'm going to wear. Is that okay? Is there anything that your horse is particularly scared of? A lot of horses can't ride in front of a cart. It's scary to hear that noise behind them if they're not used to it.
It
So
probably
like
makes them want to bolt because they want to get away from the noise. And
yeah. So there's a lot of things as far as just order who goes where, who rides what. And again, if somebody's more comfortable riding in a cart than they are sitting on a horse, all those things have to be taken into account.
Well, and the horses don't care anything about the herald's order of precedence as to who rides in first and stuff like that, because they're also trying to do that stuff too. Well, this one's supposed to go here and here. If you get horses that aren't compatible with one another that end up being, front to back or next, and that's not going to work,
Yeah.
You have to, let's go back and refigure this.
Yep. And that's why they have, the kind of the people leading or heading the horses, and they'll generally pick horses that know each other to use the king and queen. So like, my horse knows Gwendolyn's horse, so they've been used together as king and queen's horses before. And then that's a big thing, is keeping that distance. So if the group ahead of you doesn't have a whole lot of folks from their kingdom in the procession with them, you want to make sure you don't get too close to those horses because they don't know each other. And again, that's more of this that you need to learn just by being around. You can't take random horses by other random horses. You can't stand too near certain horses. If they have a red tail, or if they have a red ribbon in their tail, that actually means that they have been known to kick either other horses or just in general. So again, these are things that you learn pretty much from being around horses and just helping out and getting to know the equestrians. Any other questions about meeting people or getting authorized or any of the games we do, anything at all? Okay. We'll throw a little bit in here about barding then. Obviously, we were talking about the processions down at Gulf Wars. You'll often see the horses dressed up as well as the kings and queens. A lot of time and effort goes into these different forms of barding. Some are made of cloth, some are made of leather, some are made of strapping. You'll see a lot of different things and a lot of different styles, so it's really neat to see what each of the kingdoms does. The Mid-Realm actually has a set of barding for both the king and queen and for the prince and princess, I believe. It was made to be a baggier kind of like draping style, so that on a smaller horse, it would go down pretty much to their knees, whereas on a bigger horse, it would still go down to at least their stomachs, so it wouldn't just look silly. But for that kind of barding, a lot goes into just figuring out how it can be adjustable for all the different horses to be able to wear. And then you'll also see a lot of different people will make barding for their own horses personally. I have a set of barding with my device on it that I'll wear when I'm out, just so, if somebody sees me in my armor or something, it's like well, you know, there's her device, that's who that is. Or at Gulf Wars, a lot of us will wear the pale, or we'll have barding in the mid-realm colors, or even just with white with the pale on it or something, so everybody knows that we're with the mid-realm. So there's a lot of options there. And you can do as little as putting we've used tablecloths kind of from Goodwill as just something, so you're covering up the mundane saddle and not making it so obvious. And then, like I said, some people just go all out. And it's really neat to see the things that people have done.
Okay, that's something. I mean, I know that there's a progression, because the saddles that we use today, even if you're using an English saddle or a cowboy style, American Western style saddle, those are vastly different than what they were in the 14th century. And then as it goes back, I know they're different, but I'm less clear on the distinctions between, you know, but I know we use saddles that are greatly different than they were in the 14th century for sure.
Absolutely. I actually have a Portuguese saddle that I use as my jousting saddle. It's about the most accurate saddle that's still currently used that looks period. If you want something that's easy to hide, you'll go with a small English saddle. I've seen people, I think Sato has made kind of a wooden piece that fits in the front of the horn of his Western saddle to hide that. And there's just a lot of different things. But basically,
so is that the biggest difference? Is it seemed to me like the 14th century ones have a wooden piece behind your butt and then in front of you, so it shields you a little bit, but it basically seats you better where you can't get knocked out, I guess, if you're jousting or.
yes. Let's see if I can find a picture of mine here to show. But actually, and the funny thing is, the saddles we use currently still have those wooden pieces inside. It's called the tree. It's just we do more focusing on the comfort of the horse, so we do a little bit more to cover that up. So it's not as pronounced. Also, obviously, getting knocked out of the saddle isn't as much of a concern nowadays. So the very high cantle and pommel
our
in the front.
functionality for what we're using it for has changed. So
Exactly. But again, you can see some neat saddles. Let me see if I can find. So I actually bought a used, again, Portuguese saddle, and use that on Heffy mainly when I'm doing jousting. Sometimes there we go. I apologize. Cat is sitting in it in the photo. I don't know if you'll be able to see this. So you can see that the front and back of the saddle are very high. That is to give you that stability. And it's a lot different than the saddles that you'll see these days.
So how far back does stirrups go?
There are stirrup irons and, pieces of the bridle, the headpiece from, in Iron Age times. It's things that the Celts use. So they're not by any means a new.
Because, I mean, that helps to give you stability too, if you have something to where you can sort of use your feet to leverage and, your thigh muscles and whatnot.
And it's not just for the rider. It helps the horse too, because it makes you more balanced, which makes them more balanced and makes it easier to carry the rider. So yeah, there's pictures of artifacts that people have found going back as early as Iron Age Celtic. I've got a lot of books upstairs just on pieces that they found. I mean, even the bits that they put in their mouths, they've used for thousands of years, literally. So it's funny how much we really haven't come forward. I mean, the metal pieces and everything are still so similar. Now, a lot of them are more fancy than anything you'll see now, especially because of royalty, wanting to show off their horses and everything else. But there's all kinds of different options out there. Did we have a question up there?
You want to know if there are any folks who use Mongolian style saddles?
I have not seen one in the mid realm. I am sure that somewhere in the SCA someone does. I mean, that's another thing when you're riding. You are welcome to ride in any equipment that you are comfortable in. So if you want to ride in just if you want to ride bareback with just your bridle on, as long as you're safe and you look like you're in control of that horse, nobody's going to complain about it. Again, safety is the main concern. Any other questions? All right. Well, if anybody is interested, oh, Messina and Duran have one. That's very cool. I'd love to see a picture of it. You should post it in the comments on Facebook if you can. Actually, I'll post a picture of my my Portuguese saddle as well, so you can see it. Again, it's a used saddle that I got actually from Sir Sato, which was oddly too big for his mules, but it fits my draft pony. So it worked out for us. But again, it just shows, that's the other thing is, you need to make sure that if you're working with someone that the saddle, that they have a saddle option that works for you, because the saddle has to fit both the horse and the rider. One of my earliest riding experiences was with an older cowboy, and he says, as long as it fits the rider, that's all that matters. And that's just so wrong. If the horse isn't comfortable, it's going to cause trouble for you as well as them.
I would think so.
Looks like Messina and Duran are showing a picture of their Mongol. Wow, that is beautiful. Very cool. Thank you for sharing that. So yeah, I mean, as many different styles of saddle and bridles and every other kind of tack there are, you'll see it. You'll see people using them. And again, it's whatever is comfortable for you. As long as it's safe, we're happy with it. If I ever saw something that I thought, you know, wasn't safe or had the potential to hurt a horse, I've seen a lot of really strong bits. I might say something, but again, as long as you're in control of your horse and you and the horse both seem happy with the situation, you know, you be happy with it. One of our biggest pushes is to just try to really look in the period, whether again it's just with helmet covers, or even, you know, putting a little cover over your big old Western saddle so it looks a little more medieval. Little things like that make a big difference, and we're really pushing towards that.
Okay, I've got a question for you to touch on, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Like, I found one of the most problematic things is if you travel with the horse, you have to have certificates, your veterinary certificates, and all these things. There's lots of rules, Coggin certificates, et cetera, so on. If you want to touch on that so that people that aren't real familiar with those kind of have an idea what they're getting into.
Absolutely. So again, that's one of the things that makes going to events so expensive for equestrians. It's not just all the work that goes into it, you know, the gas money of hauling a truck and trailer with the big old horse in there. You have to have the vet come out and actually give you a health certificate. Most states, if you are leaving the state, you have to have a health certificate dated within 30 days. Again, that differs from state to state. So you would have to check your regulations. But another major one is the Coggins, and most places generally will need that within a year if you're going out of state. But again, state to state is very different, but each of these requires a vet visit. The Coggins actually requires pulling blood from the horse. So it's just another part of horse ownership that that makes our events a little more work.
The rules that apply, like, okay, I'm in Ohio, so if I'm going, we'll say, to New York State, I have to go by, since that's my destination, I have to go by whatever their
New York, yes.
rules are, whatever the local rule of
Absolutely.
law is.
And honestly, you would want to check whatever states you're traveling through to get there. And if you, most states, if you get pulled over and you're out of state, they can actually fine you up to $10,000 for not having your correct papers per horse. So it's not just us being, you know, sticklers for paperwork. You can actually get in trouble legally for these things. So again, the easiest thing to do is, you know, go online, look up your Department of Agriculture in the state that you're going to, and any state you may have to travel through, and see what those requirements are.
Well, I just knew from events, that's one of our biggest things, is getting that coordinated and getting the correct information out. If you're doing an event that's going to have equestrian, you have to have somebody, hopefully a person that stays right on top of that and can get it
Yeah.
in and out.
Absolutely. Yeah. Checking in the paperwork is a big step in the checking in process. In equestrian, we have to say who, see who's there, who the riders are, kind of get a waiver, information on who to call if there's an emergency. So if you got hurt, who do you want to take care of your horse? Who do we call? And then we also need to make a recording that, yes, we saw those, the health paper if it's required for the state, or yes, we saw the Coggins if it's required for that state. So there's a lot of information that has to be collected. All right, any other questions? General or anything? Okay, well, again,
Before we go, I do have one. Sorry, I wasn't fast enough on undoing the mic.
No, you're fine.
And this is going to be a little bit different of a question because I come from the Ren Fair world where the equestrian activities and the jousting, while they might not be a thing that's going on 24/7, they're always framed as, like, regardless of what show you're at, they're always framed as the primary entertainment act, regardless of whether it's doing like the ring games or like any of the games of skill or the actual like jousting head with the two knights on the lances and they actually trying to go at each other with it. And that's always framed as the big thing that we try to get like a large spectator pool for, the thing that is like a very like high visibility type of thing here. At least in our kingdom, we're just now trying to restart the equestrian community out here for a while. So in your experience, do you normally find that equestrian is generally, if not something that a lot of people participate in, something that's like a high visibility spectator thing? Or is it like the equestrian community overall, it's like its own little world, and if you're not within that world or with fear of influence, then you really don't have much to do with it and just go about whatever else you were doing that day?
I wouldn't say it's its own little world, but just because of the specifications of what we need, the arena and everything else, a lot of times we're off on our own. And there's just so many things going on at the same time. The equestrian goes on at the same time as the rapier, as the heavy, as the arts and sciences, and the archery and heavy and everything else that's going on. So it's kind of like everybody's doing their own thing. And a lot of times people don't take the time to come over and just visit and see what we're doing. We have had royalty recently that have kind of encouraged that, which we truly appreciate. It's a lot of work getting out there, and it is fun when we have a little bit of a crowd out there, chanting for us and, rooting us on. But again, a lot of times we're just so far out that we just don't get much of a crowd. And again, that's why we need so much help. It's usually just us equestrians out there. You'll do your run on the challenge course, and then you'll put your horse up and you'll go score it for somebody else. And it's so if anybody wants to give their time and learn more, that's a great way to do it, because we know that you're helping us out, and that really shows that you're interested.
See, and I was thinking, like, depending on the event, like, okay, where they've generally had like Red Dragon, if there's no room to have equestrian there because of the way the facilities are, and that's pretty much where you're traditionally, they've had the event for years and years, it's hard to integrate something like that into an already existing framework if there's not the possibility. The one fairgrounds that's out in Indiana, I know that you could do different things with it because it has more options available to you.
Well, and the other thing is, as much as we'd love to say, yeah, I want to see equestrian at every event, we really can't say that, because not only is it almost impossible to find a good site to have horses at, it's a lot of work and money for the equestrians. Again, it's not just driving out the event the day of. You've got to get all those health papers every time. It's the gas money to and from. It's, when we're done, we don't just put up our gear and walk away. Then we have to spend an hour taking care of the horse afterwards. So it's not something we could just do every weekend, as much as we love it. I think in the mid-realm, we normally have between 8 and 10 equestrian events a year. Obviously, the winter months, You're not going to see much going on, but pretty much spring through fall, you can see once a month at least events going on in a normal year. All right, do you have any other questions?
Let me check Facebook one more time.
Well, while you're doing that, we do again have a group, an open group called Middle Kingdom. I think it's Mid-Realm Riders, actually. I'm sorry. Again, even if you're not currently active in equestrian, even if you don't own your own horse, join that group, ask the questions, network with people, find out when the events are, and come see us. It's the best way that you can possibly start to get into the equestrian activities in the SCA. And those are the people that are going to be able to tell you the best how to do it. We'll be able to say, oh, this person's in your area, let's get you hooked up with them. You know, they can possibly tell you where in your area you can go to get lessons, and then, you know, they can teach you about the games, and it's a good networking opportunity, and that's really where you need to start. So anything on Facebook?
No, that was it.
All right, well, thank you all for coming tonight. Feel free to message or email me if you have any questions. You can post on the event on Facebook and I'll check it. But thank you very much.